I'm so delighted to be back in Unity Space. I have been in Unity Space online. Hi, everybody at home, because I've been one of you for the last several months, where I've been joining you from my bed. And I've been listening and taking in and being with from a different space. However, there is something so magical about being in this energy today. Can you guys feel it? Like, it's just like vibrational. And it's funny that it started in a space of opportunity. I loved how you used that word, right? Where it was like, oh, I get an opportunity to look at how we're going to shift and move and be creative. And that's, of course, what imagination is all about. And when Susan reached out to me and asked if I could speak today, I literally was in the middle of doing the end part of one of my lectures that I'm putting out for Udemy University on vision boarding. And I was literally at the part where I was talking about vision casting. And she's like, do you think you could do a talk on imagination? I was like, that's funny. That was really funny. I was like, that's a MOG moment. One of my students introduced me to the concept of a MOG moment, which means moment of grace, which apparently came from architect of being work. And she had studied it with her mom, and she said, you know, Miss Swift, I have all of these MOG moments. She's like, do you have MOG moments? And I was like, oh, girl, all the time, all the time. However, being aware of them is what's really, really special. Of being like, oh, that was good. That was great alignment. And sometimes it comes through me with goosebumps. Do you guys ever get that? When you know you're on track, because you're like, oh, yeah, I can feel you through me right now, right? So when I got the topic of imagination, the downloaded immediately was the power of imagination. And I thought, being the educator that I am and doing good due diligence, I thought, let's Google that. Let's Google the power of imagination and see if anybody's written anything on it. And sure enough, there's actually a book by Kerry Kirkwood called The Power of Imagination. And I was like, ooh, let's see what her genius brings forward. So I pulled a quote from her that I just thought was a beautiful way of opening. And she boldly states in her piece that believers in the universal truth use their imaginations to see beyond current circumstances into the realm where God paints pictures in their minds. Healings are commonplace. Goals are accomplished, dreams come true, and victories are celebrated. And I thought, yes, yes, Kerry Kirkwood. Well said. Then she continues to say, but we all with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror of the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit, which is a Corinthians piece, 3:14 to 18. And if you would have asked me, 10 years ago if I would ever be quoting a Bible verse, I would have told you you would have lost your mind, right? Because there is just not much that I felt like I connected to, but there is so much wisdom in there. And there's so much wisdom in that statement, which was really all about that we all have the power to transform what we imagine into reality. That's really what it comes down to. We are the vessel of that transformation. And everything that's literally in front of us in our space, we've created. And I heard this great quote the other day, and follow Matthew Patty. Does anybody follow Matthew Patty's work? Know anything about him? I highly recommend. He refers to us as skin bags of emotion living in the quantum field. And I was like, that is quite an image. I imagined like us all kind of forming into this skin bag of emotion, and we're actually living within this quantum space. And when we can get out of our own way, we can tap into all that there is around us, which is truly the essence of imagination. So Louise Hay, who should actually be my best friend in this lifetime, and I'm devastated to this day that I never got to meet her in person. Anybody else a Louise Hay fan in here? Okay, so meeting her was on my bucket list, and I was like, she's a mentor and a visionary, and she just is a lovely human being. And when she passed, I was like, fine, next lifetime, you and me, right? But she wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And in You Can Heal Your Life, she speaks to these patterns that she noticed in people. And people would come and talk to her and speak to her about their ailments, what's going on for them. And she noticed that what people thought about directly reflected on their physiology. That what they were saying, and multiple people, not just one or two, that they were saying things that were reflecting in their bodies. So an example of that is people who continually had foot injuries were afraid of stepping forward in their life, that there's some forward movement that's missing in their life. I'm winking for those of you who are at home because Stefan's here with his foot up on a chair, just so you know. Oh, right? I know. You're like, okay, I'm getting the message. So, and sometimes it works reciprocally. Sometimes we think things and then create them. So I had a moment this past weekend. I actually fell off of 10 feet off of a bridge, and I landed with a bike on top of me. And I ended up with an injured fingernail. And it's really quite comical because, guys, this is the finger that got hurt, right? Out of all of that accident, this is the finger that got hurt. And I was like, I'm curious what Louise would say about that. Like, what is that all about? But it was really special. That's right. Turn up the volume. I thought it was really special this morning. I was talking to Susan and the rest of the crew that do prayer before, and we had a moment where she spoke to us being the bridge for the message today. And I thought, isn't it interesting that last week I fell off a bridge, and today I get to be the bridge, right? And that's the power of imagination, right? I closed my eyes and I was like, I am the bridge. Like, there's no need to be in fear of it. There's no need to be in frustration around it. It is actually a part of who I am. I can use that in my imagination. So Joe Dispenza follows up Louise Hay's work with his own journey around self-healing. So he is another one of my mentors and heroes who is a cyclist, and he was in a major bike accident and he broke his back. Does anybody follow Joe Dispenza's work at all? Okay, so he broke his spine and he was laying in the hospital, and the doctors came to him and said, listen, you're gonna have to have this life-saving surgery if you plan on ever living a normal life. But this surgery that you're gonna have is gonna actually leave you paralyzed from the waist down because we're gonna have to sever your spinal cord. And Joe was like, nope on a rope. That is not happening. That's my new favorite saying, by the way, for any of you who've watched. There's a couple of movies out right now that I'm just really enjoying, but there's one called, this is a total segue, but there's one about parenting where it's called Yes Day, and the parents have to say yes all the time. You'll appreciate this. Yes Day. And so in it, at the beginning, the opening segment of it was all the different ways parents say no. And one of them was nope on a rope. And I was like, adopted this saying ever since. I was like, oh, nope on a rope. That is not happening. So Joe was like, nope on a rope about this situation. And he didn't really know what he was doing, going to do, but he knew that that wasn't the answer. He was called to make a different decision. And he was laying in the hospital bed anyway, and he closed his eyes, and he connected with the quantum, and he pulled in his own healing. And he started to imagine his spine stacking up perfectly. He imagined his bone healing miraculously. And within 6 months' time, he walked out of that hospital and then spent the rest of his entire life trying to figure out what the heck he had done, and how he can scientifically prove that everybody can heal themselves and that they have the power to do that. And so he has now since experienced miracle after miracle after miracle of healing. And so Stefan, when I came in and saw him, I thought, yes, we're gonna get into imagination and healing today. So that's really exciting. So this idea of being able to close your eyes and imagine yourself in a healed form is a way of biohacking. Biohacking, anybody familiar with the term? Yeah, okay. So it's another term for do-it-yourself biology, okay? Different things that people do. It's an amorous term, so it's it encompasses a whole bunch of things. But some people consume bone broth to help heal the collagen in their bodies, right? Or some people will go and do cold water plunges. Anybody? Cold water plunge? Yeah? Okay, that promotes stem cell growth. Stem cells, for those of you who don't know what those are cells that can turn themselves into any cell in your body. So you could imagine how important that would be to be able to stimulate stem cell growth. So those are just different forms of biohacking. However, using your imagination to biohack is what I like to refer to as intentional vision casting. And this is where we see the end result that we want. We see the process of getting there. And it is the most accessible and affordable form of healing yourself, right? Everybody has it. You have all accessibility to it, right? Because we were born with this ability. I remember distinctly being rushed to the emergency room at the hospital when I had my first child. And I rarely ever share the story, and I'm not going to share all the details because it was dramatic and traumatic for a lot of people involved. But I want you to imagine, because now I find it really funny. Do you ever find those moments in your life that were traumatic that now you're just like, that's actually just really funny now? Yeah. So I'm buck naked on a gurney on all fours, being ran down the hospital ward. And I look up, and there is my doula, my baby's father, and my mom all standing there gobsmacked, white as a ghost. And I'm yelling, "I'll bring you back a baby!" at the top of my lungs. And there's a nurse on the gurney with me, and she's trying to get my heart rate slowed because we lost the baby's heart rate, and it was like go, go, go time. They bumped a kid with an appendectomy to get me in there and get this baby out of me. And so you could imagine the energy. And it was funny because we were talking when I got here about you can feel the energy moving in here, right? And it was just like in this story. And so I could feel the energy. And then this doctor whispers in my ear, "You need to hold still, because I'm about to plunge a 3-inch needle in your spine, and if you move, I could paralyze you." Come on! Are you kidding? I'm in contractions here. And all I'm thinking is oh, please don't contract. How am I gonna? And you know what I did? I used my imagination. I closed my eyes, and I saw myself sitting on the top of this hill. To this day, it makes me emotional. The top of this hill in Tibet. And I looked down, and I was holding my son. And I didn't know he was a boy until that moment. And I was looking at him, and I was like, oh, it's so going to be okay. It's just going to be, I could see it so clearly. And the boom, bounce back. We're back in the emergency room. They're laying me down and twisting me around and cutting me open and getting this kid out. And right before they announce, "It's a boy," they go, and I go, "Boy." And they kind of look at me, and I was like, I saw it first. I imagined it first. And this isn't the first. It's happened a lot throughout my life. I remember in grade 9, I was sitting in a classroom, and I just burst into tears because I had this feeling, this really strong feeling, and my girlfriend looks over at me, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "No." I go, "My grandma just died." And she goes, "What?" This is before cell phones, people. It's before text messaging. This is I was like, "My grandmother just died." And she goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "I don't know how to explain that I know, but I know." So I go home. My mom answers the door. She's like, "Jody, I've got some really sad news." And I said, "I know." I said, "Grandma died." And she's like, "Okay." And I know that she's had these moments with me throughout my life. But the funny thing is that I'm not unique. Right? I'm actually not unique. Everybody can feel when they're in a space of alignment about what the next steps are, where we're traveling to, right? When we use our imagination. I saw my grandma, right? She came to me, and I just knew that she was no longer here, okay? So in that moment, I realized that imagination could also be prophetic, that I could think it and I could create it, right? That there's something about imagining it and seeing it. And the reason why I say this is not unique to me, you guys, is because the very chair you're sitting on was in someone's imagination before it was under your butt, right? And in fact, it's probably the 90th generation or 90th version of itself. And I imagine myself sometimes sitting back in the caveman days with the cavemen sitting there on that rock, right? And they're like, okay, this is not comfy, right? This isn't comfy. There's got to be a better way. And they asked a really good question, which was, how can I make this more comfortable? And so maybe they carved a tree. And then somebody was sitting on the tree stump and somebody went, my back's a little sore. How could I leave a backrest on this? And somebody carved a tree with a backrest. And then somebody went, that's an amazing, comfortable tree stump. I want to take it with me. How can I take it with me? How can I make this portable? Right? And so what I realized is that our brains are wired to create and look for the answers. So sometimes using your imagination and getting it to ignite is just about asking a great question, about digging into a really great question, and then the answer starts to come. And now you're sitting in some sort of fabric-covered chair with, a metal frame. And I'm sure at some point someone was like, you know what we should do with metal? We should make chairs. And somebody else was like, you're nuts. That's crazy. No, I see it. I can see that we can make chairs out of metal. And so as the world turns and you get into innovation and creation, your imagination begins to ignite. And you can use your imagination for a million different things. I'm going to tangent, so I'm just going to check back in here because I can go on about this topic forever. Let's roll into looking at so Mary Morrissey. Any big fans of Mary Morrissey? Okay. So once you've asked that really good question, she always says to let go and let God, right? So that's the next step, is like making sure that you've asked the good question and then just get out of the way of it. So clients that I work with, some of the clients I work with in vision board classes tell me that they close their eyes, they can't see anything. There's actually a biological issue, I'll call it. I hate using defect or issue because it's supposed to be exactly the way it is. However, some people literally can't do that, but everybody can use their imagination in a playful way. So if you were to take the very pen, if you were holding a pen in your hand and we were to create it into a flute, what would you do with your hands? Take that same pen and turn it into a straw. What would you do? Yeah. Take that same pen and turn it into a mustache. A unibrow. Right? A feather. Okay? So you guys all did that. Immediately did that because you didn't have to be taught to use your imagination. It is no different than being able to breathe. Right? It's an automatic part of your nervous system in order to use your imagination. And so you don't have to close your eyes and see things. You can actually get out and be in action around imagination. In Psychology Today, this is one of the favorite reports that I read. They took a group of weightlifters and they had them push their 1 rep max, which means that they could not push any more weight and they could only push to that 1 rep. Then they had them sit off to the side and close their eyes and imagine adding 5 more pounds to the sides. And then imagine themselves laying on that bench and imagine themselves pushing that weight and putting it down. And 100% of the candidates that went back to that bench after doing that imagination exercise pushed more weight. 100% of the time. And this is recorded in Psychology Today. Okay. I know for myself, when I played basketball in high school, my coach made us do this. We had to sit, I remember very distinctly sitting in another room next to the gymnasium. And he said, play the game in your mind first and then play it on the court. Close your eyes and imagine that shot going in. Imagine the feeling of the crowd cheering around you. And without a doubt, when I took the time to do that, I absolutely had the best games that I ever played. When I was in those spaces of that mind's eye, if I did not tap into the emotion of the scene, it just became a fleeting thought, right? So it's the emotional piece that's really important when you're looking at vision casting, when you're looking at creating what you want. Because imagination is directly related to our emotional field. Are you guys open to doing a little activity to prove this? You guys at home can do this too. Okay, you're gonna close your eyes, but before you do, you're gonna place your hands together like this, and I want you to imagine there's a plate on your hands, okay? If you feel safe, you can close your eyes. I'm not coming near you, nobody's coming near you. You're gonna close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that there is a warm, hot, steamy pile of dog poop sitting on that plate. Okay? So now, come back to me. I want you to pay attention to how many of you had a biopsychological or biophysical response to that. How many of you recoiled? You actually went like this, right? Pay attention to the recoil. How many of you, your nostrils flared? You were like, oh, my nostrils just flared. There is no poop in front of us, but we know that that would not be a pleasant experience, right? So we created the image, the scent, the idea in our head and had a response to it. Now, I'm not leaving you with dog poop, so let's do that again, okay? So let's get back in here. You're gonna close your eyes, and I want you to imagine an amazing lunch. Like whatever your favorite of favorites are, for those analytical types, don't get too tight on, oh, it can't be this or that or whatever. Just like choose something. Something that would be like super yummy, something that would fill and satiate you right now. Okay, take a deep breath in. Smell it. Feel the satisfaction in your body of knowing that you're going to get to eat it. Pay attention to whether or not you salivated. And come back to me. How many of you had a biopsychological response that time? How many of you salivated? Okay? So we get choice as to what we want to put in our imagination and what response we want out of it. Right? We can choose the dog poop if we want to in life, or we can choose the incredible meal, right? But we got to create the story that created the result in our body. So I'm going to have you look at different ways that you can develop your imagination. How many of you, now this is going to be an age thing, so I don't know, I think we're going to be safe in this room. How many of you have been driving in a car, no technology, and you just got bored? Remember those days where you're sitting in the passenger seat or the back seat and you're just like, wow, I'm bored, right? And nowadays you're probably like, I want to get bored. I'd give anything to be bored. I just got to play in my imagination. When I was in cars traveling, I would like hold my breath and pretend to jump all the power poles, right? And create little games in my brain of all the different things that I could do. So one of the things you can do to improve your imagination is to actually get bored. Allow yourself to be without stimulus and just be. Go lay in the grass and stare at the clouds. See how your imagination and your creativity start to ignite when you look at those clouds move. Anybody still cloud watchers? Mm-hmm. I'm totally a cloud watcher. Yes. Go hang out with kids and play. And if it feels really clunky initially, because sometimes it will, because sometimes we forget how to play, let them lead. They have no problem leading the way. They'll hand you the teacup, they'll hand you the hammer, they'll hand you the axe or the gun or whatever they're playing. And you just have to go with and flow with. You'll probably lose 25 pounds while you're at it, by the way. These guys are like energetic, okay? Which means you're gonna have to eat to put it back on, okay? Do something in the arts. You wanna develop your imagination? Vivian like beautifully displayed it this morning. Your version of Anthony's song was just beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. And so it's like taking something that already exists and creating and putting your own spin on it. You know, dance, play music, do art, paint, draw, craft. Do something creative, because in the creativity, your imagination just fires. It just ignites. And you play and build and play and build. Carpentry, right? Gardening. There's a million different ways to be in creation. My family plays a manifestation game when we go on road trips. I don't know if you guys have ever played this, but it's called What If, okay? What if we pass this, what would you want to see? So if we're going to BC, one of the games we played, I was like, I want to see a fish. And my partner was like, I want to see a bear. And my oldest son goes, I want to see a Burger King burger. Clearly he was hungry. And my youngest, who still is in a really imaginative space, says, I want to see a pink Volkswagen. And I was like, man, we're boring. He's like, well, seriously, Mom, we're going to BC. You're not going to see a bear or a fish? Like, what are you talking about right now? Of course we're going to run. The probability is really high. When you're playing in the manifestation game, you don't want the probability to be really high, right? And so you want to make it fantastical. Guess what? We saw the bear, the fish, the burger that day, within that day. But that pink car showed up 3 weeks later when I was in a moment of breakdown and I needed to know that God was by my side. And the pink car passes. Mog moment. Thank you. So I always like to leave my talks with one thing that you can walk away with. And thank you so much for being here with me today, by the way. It is to come to a space of how to vision cast. So vision casting is imagining being in basically the shape that you want, the care that you want, having all the things you want, health, wealth, vitality, all of those things, and seeing yourself at the end result of it. So find yourself a space. My suggestion is do it while moving. Be in the car and see the best car version. Be in the kitchen and see the kitchen fallout. Imagine while you're in movement so your body can memorize what you're doing and be in play with you. And then basically invite other people in. Hey, can you imagine with me that we're going to do this, or imagine with me that we're going to do that? And then get into that fun, high energy vibration space and watch it just come to manifestation. Thank you so much for having me today. Take care. It was so fun. Oh, yes. One more thing. I get the pleasure of leading you in meditation today. So this is where you can maybe do a visualization if you wanted to in your meditation. Maybe ask that curious question that could bring you the bigger answer. Viv? Get grounded. You can open yourself up. Take a deep breath in. I surrender. I trust and I know that as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. I surrender. I trust and I know that as I surrender, I fall into the arms of love. I surrender. I trust and I know that as I surrender,
surrender. I fall into the arms of love.
Be where you are. Trust is exactly where you're supposed to be. And imagine yourself another reality, if you so choose. See it as is. See it as you want it to be. Feel the emotion of the new reality. Engage your senses. Smell, sight, sound.